ça va bien. So I thought I would bring you one last French video for the year all about Bastille Day, because some of your learning this week is going to be all about Bastille Day. I don't know if you can remember as far back as a year ago, but this time last year when we were all in school, we celebrated Bastille Day as a whole school all together, and we did lots of lovely activities where we made our own Eiffel Towers, and we made Monet watercolour pictures of little water lilies, and we played balls outside on the playground, and do you remember in the morning we had the cafe, and we tried croissants and baguettes and pain au chocolat and all that kind of thing. And that's because the 14th of July, or le 14 juillet, is the French National Day of Celebration, okay? And in this video I'm going to tell you all about why. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story and tell you all about why it's a National Day of Celebration in France and how they celebrate. And then at the end I'm going to tell you the kinds of things that you're going to be doing this week. And over the week, if you can share some of the things that you've done, that would be lovely, because then at the end of the week we can have a bit of a celebration, like with the Olympics, the Shrub Street Olympics. We can have Shrub Street Bastille Day as well. Okay? So this is the kind of thing that happens in France on the 14th of July. I'm not entirely sure how much of that will happen this year, because they've still got the same kind of restrictions that we have, but I'm sure they will still be celebrating on the 14th, okay? This is why they celebrate. So in the 18th century, okay, back in the 1700s, French society was divided into a hierarchy. That means they had 3 different levels in society. They had clergy, nobles and commoners. Le roi, the king, was greedy and spoilt, and he was the absolute ruler over everybody, so he was at the top. The nobles and clergy controlled huge areas of land and industry, so they were just underneath the king, and they were extremely rich. But then unfortunately the common people at the bottom were the huge majority, so most people in France were poor people, and they worked the land, so they worked on the land like farmers for very little in return, and had to pay huge taxes to the nobles and to the church. So they didn't have a lot of money, they had to work very hard, and they had to pay taxes to the people who were above them in the hierarchy. Okay? And in 1789 France was in a very bad way. The harvest had been poor in recent times, and the common people were hungry because they didn't have what they hadn't got very much from the land, and what they had got from the land they'd probably been having to send out to some of the nobles and the clergy anyway, so they were hungry. Additionally, the king, who was called Louis XVI, his extravagant spending, because he was so greedy and selfish, he'd left the country with almost no money at all. And so the king decided he would raise money by demanding even more taxes from the commoners. So he wanted the commoners to pay him even more money so that he could carry on being greedy. Okay, so this is what happened. Obviously the poor people were not happy about this. The commoners were not happy about this situation. So they started to think, this is unfair. And those people who said that they thought it was unfair and spoke out against the king ended up being put into prison just for saying that they thought it was an unfair system. And they were put in a prison, a famous prison, known as La Bastille Saint-Antoine. Okay, and we'll come to what's happening in this picture. On the 14th of July, this is where we get to the 14th of July, 1789, hungry, angry rioters broke into the prison, set the prisoners free and stole the weapons which were being kept there. Many of the guards and officers were killed, so it was a big kind of riot where they said, right, we're not having this anymore. They broke into the prison and they freed the prisoners, and they stole a lot of weapons from the guards. Actually, there were only 7 people in the prison cells at the time, but the storming of the Bastille, where the common people came and took over the Bastille prison, was seen as a triumph of the common people. It was just symbolic that they triumphed over the ruling classes. They managed to have a victory over the ruling classes. The king, however, refused to accept that the common people had the right to govern themselves and to share in the country's fortune. So the king all the time was saying, no, you can't have any more wealth, you can't have any rights to rule over your land, no. But the commoners kept fighting and kept protesting and rioting and saying, that's what we want, that's what we think we should have. So the revolutionaries, the common people, eventually said that the king, they decided, well, the king's no longer our ruler then. we can't get him to help us, so he's not going to be our ruler anymore. And instead they declared that France was now a republic with no king or queen, so ruled by the people instead of being ruled by a king or queen. And to this day they don't have a king or queen in France. And they adopted their motto, which you may have seen possibly, called Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, which means freedom, equality and brotherhood, to show that the new country would be fair to all. And wherever you see anything to do with France, really, you see that motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. It means freedom, equality, brotherhood, to show that the country would be fair to everyone and not just the rich people. The church's land and the nobles' property were confiscated so that everyone could benefit from their riches. So in the end, the rich people had to give over all their land so that it could be split fairly between more of the people, the commoners of France.